Jean Fruth, welcome back to the Bookshelf Conversations.
I am so happy to be back, and we have to talk about your hat as part of this, can't we? I mean, it's too good.
As I was explaining to Jean before we started, I try to match my hat to the guest. So this is the hat for the Boston Bloomer Girls, which was a barnstorming team back in the late 19th century. So we are going to be talking about your book and documentary, See Her, Be Her. So the first question I have, I'm guessing the documentary, like chicken and egg, the documentary came first.
Well, they really came simultaneously. So when the project started, I didn't really know it was going to be a documentary. It was we really should be our focus should be women in baseball. That's our next project, and so we didn't know where it was going to go when we made that decision. And as we delved in, there was so many directions it could go, like the history of women in baseball, on the field, off the field. Do we stay in the US? Do we go international? So we started adding video to the project because it really just needed to tell the story in that way. So video just seemed a lot more powerful to be able to tell the story and to ideally give these women visibility. So we started doing video, but still photography is where my heart is and will always be. So then as we started to go down the road and tell this story and decide we're going to do a documentary, it was, well, how do I still do my still photography, do all the interviews as a woman in baseball, interviewing other women in baseball, direct for the first time,
Mhm.
produce for the first time, and shoot stills for a book. And in the beginning, the shoots were tough. Like I wasn't getting the photos that I wanted. I was missing a lot. I was in my own way because I needed video. So therefore, the still photographer can't jump in front of the the videographer. So it took me a while to figure out how I can do it side by side. And though not perfect, and I learned a lot. We did get a book out of it. I got better as I went along, at being able to balance, both and get the stills that I wanted for the project along with the video. So, it
How,
took a
how
little
long
time.
did this project take?
It took 3 years, but it was 2 years of shooting. It was 1 year of planning. There was so much, and you can appreciate this because this is what you do, but there was so much research in order
Mm.
to do the project. I mean, there's just it goes so deep and in so many different directions, and there's still so much I have to learn. So, so the research and being able to, I mean, we told the story of 7 women around the world, but even just finding the women who we were going to tell, we knew, okay, we want somebody in Japan. Well, how do you find the right person in Japan? Whose story are we going to tell? Who are we going to highlight? And there's a lot of choices, but finding that right one that's going to work with you and be right for the project is took a lot of planning and a lot of research, and we had some good we had a lot of help with that. So so that was the first year was, and then practicing making videos. What do we want it to be? How do we, what's the style? So that was year one, and then year two and three was full on um doing video and of course stills. And having a deadline was actually good because then we got our deal to show the film during the World Series, the 2024 World Series, between games two and three. So then there was a goal of, well, it's got to be finished. So I like goals. There was a lot of people around us saying it's too tight. It was definitely tight, but I'm glad we had the goal and I'm glad we had the deadline. So and it did get shown between games two and three of the World Series. And now we've got some really great announcements we're going to be making that we haven't made yet. I can make them with you first. That's kind of fun. But
Ooh,
we're going to be streaming on
exclusive.
We'll be streaming on Amazon. So that's really exciting for us. We have our streaming deal with Amazon. And that's important to us because we want the masses to be able to see it. And there needs to be a way. And Amazon is just a great way to get it out there in a bigger way. And we're also doing uh, a series of screenings, a tour for the 2025 Major League Baseball season, where it'll be shown in Dolby AMC theaters in different cities across the country. So those announcements will be coming out soon.
Very nice.
But here first.
You heard it here first. Which of the countries, I think I know the answer, but which of the countries provided the biggest challenge?
Well, anything with a language barrier, of course, is a challenge, and even just as we jumped into this, I probably should have thought more about it, but maybe if I did, I would have backed out. So, but Uganda was extremely challenging, and that wasn't language, but that was just being able to go to these regions that women play baseball, the lack of just everything, the lack of funds that they have, equipment that they have, being able to tell that story had so many challenges, but it was also probably the most rewarding things I've ever done. And Japan is, also um, it's just such a different culture and being able to navigate and tell that story. And we were very lucky with Ayami Sato because she really let us into her home, her family's home. So in that way, I mean, even all the countries, South Korea, they were all challenging and traveling to different places. And to tell the story, you really need an intimate connection. And we were able, we really had great sheroes that let us into their world and the personal side of them that nobody had seen. So there was a lot of trust there that built up over time.
Yeah, I would have thought that Uganda would provide the bigger of the challenges. Now, it is fairly well documented how baseball ended up in Japan, how baseball ended up in Latin America. How did baseball end up in Uganda?
Uganda, there's a documentary out there about Little League boys baseball that started not too long ago. And uh, there was a man who spent time not from Uganda, from the United States, I believe, and he built big baseball fan, and he built a little league field and started the first little league in Uganda. So how it got there, I mean, people, men were playing baseball, boys were playing baseball, but just makeshift baseball, and then little league formed in Uganda, and that was really cool. So that was kind of the first formal teams. Um, and they went all the way to the Little League World Series. So that was really exciting. So Uganda was the first team, African team to go to Williamsport, and I think still the only one, maybe. Um, so then from there, one of the coaches from the early little league teams, he's the one who started girls baseball in Uganda, and he has an organization called Baseball at Heart. And now he has 8 regions where women and girls are playing baseball in Uganda. And of course, it's a lot more there. It's a lot more than just baseball. There's education tied to it. I mean, these women some of them have housing. There's so much there. Where women, really need help. It's off the field. So it's keeping them in school. I mean, there's a lot to it. There's one region where it's a refugee camp. And so these women have, fled war and now are, in this refugee camp playing baseball, but also getting an education and have food and place to stay. And so it's nothing I've ever experienced before. I'm still unpacking from that one.
Now, the women and girls in this film are in their 20s and 30s, basically. So they came along after the challenges of getting girls actually to be able to play in Little League. You talk about that a little bit, but I'm still thinking there are some countries where, for lack of a better word, machismo might stand in the way of some of these women trying to get into baseball.
Oh, you're absolutely right. I mean, just I mean, Cuba is a perfect example of that. I mean, it's frowned upon. It's considered, not feminine to play baseball. And even one of our Shiro's, her father did not want her to play baseball and refused and fought with her. And And the nice thing about that family story is that he turned around eventually, and the love of his daughter, I guess, helped him evolve. And now he is one of her biggest fans and goes to her games and has accepted that she's a woman playing baseball. But it certainly has taken some time, and it really is frowned upon in a pretty big way. I was in the Dominican Republic. That wasn't part of the film, but it was part of the book. And even some of the men, I was shooting an all-girls baseball game, all women, and men coming around, looking, watching, can't even believe what they're seeing. And you see some heads being, like they don't like it, they don't want it. So we're evolving and things take time, but progress is being made all over the world, so that there's hope, and that's what it's about. It's certainly not about perfection, it's about progress.
It was very touching to watch the meaning that baseball had for a lot of these women. Uh, excuse me. One of your stars, for again, for lack of a better word, the firefighter who was injured shortly before having to participate in her team's games. That was something.
Oh, it really was. Yeah, Allie, I mean, and if when I talk to Allie and interview her, if I close my eyes, I would think she's 40 years old, and it's hard to believe that she was 21. She might be 22 now. I think she's still 21, but yeah, 20 when I met her, and so mature. And here she is as a wildland firefighter fighting fires, and those fires were unbelievable. As you know, the last few years in Canada, they had incredible challenges. And so, right before she went to the World Cup, she was in massive wildland firefighting for 2 weeks and fell in a fire pit, the day before she was supposed to come to the World Cup. And as a pitcher, that wasn't great for her. And um, it was, yeah, really the challenges and what it means to her, but and also what her profession means to her. These women, I mean, not only is she playing a game that, she's fighting adversity, but firefighting also, there's adversity that she's, facing there. And they're special women, they're strong women, and they're certainly role models for the next generation.
The woman from Japan has been doing this for a long time. She's in her 30s, and you had toward the end of your film, you had a meeting between her and I'm sorry, I'm forgetting her name at the moment. The girl from America.
Oh, so Kelsey Whitmore from the US. Yep. Yeah,
And
and Kelsey's the only woman who gets paid to play baseball in the United States, and she's playing for the Oakland Ballers now.
so that brings up something else. I remember years ago, I was covering a Yankee fantasy camp, and there was one woman who participated, and she had to feel so isolated because and Kelsey Whitmore, I imagine also, she has to dress separately. She doesn't get to hang around in the locker room with her teammates. So that might be difficult when you're playing a team sport and you want to bond with your teammates.
Oh, you're so right. And you lose a lot and you are isolated. And in her situation, that's not going to change. The only thing that changes is her maturity level and how she handles it. But it's still there, and it's so true. And even when you see girls now playing on little league teams, I've shot baseball for a long time and little league games for a long time. And you go to a game and they say, "Oh, there's a girl on that team. Do you see the girl? Oh, the girl's gonna pitch next inning. You don't forget, get pictures of the girl." And so they're so isolated, and you see them so many times sitting at the end of the bench, not even at a younger age. And of course, as they get older, it gets, even more pronounced. But then when girls get a chance to play with other girls and you have that opportunity, I shot my first all girls baseball game. It was a little over 3 years ago, which started this project. Now they're just athletes. Now they're just playing. And, then the magic happens because they're not isolated. They're just playing baseball, and they're playing at a really high level, and it's fun to watch, just like the Women's World Cup. So the ideal scenario is we progress to something like that. Japan has all women's baseball teams. South Korea has 50. all women's baseball teams. So, and I think the United States is going in that direction slowly, but, could you imagine what Kelsey could do if she was on an all women's team, the star that she would be, as opposed to competing against men?
Some of the male figures you had on your show, Jimmy Rollins, Cal Ripken Jr., Ichiro, was fascinating to the way they are so accepting. Uh, that sounds like a condescending word, accepting. But Cal Ripken praised his sister. He had a sister who was better than he was. Jimmy Rollins' mother played ball, so I think more and more uh, males in the game are seeing that their mothers, aunts, sisters, grandmothers are their role models.
It's so cool. I mean, having their voice for these women meant so much and means so much, and we need those voices. We need the top of the game to accept, like you say, but not only accept, but support. I mean, what Ichiro is doing for women in Japan is, and he doesn't have to, do anything. I mean, he's has the most hits in the world. I mean, incredible. But he gives his time and has this game every year against the girls all-star Japan team, and he hosts it at the Tokyo Dome. Like, what a platform for these girls to play, and then against his team. And it's not a joke. When we interviewed him, we're like, "Oh, is there some fun that goes back and forth that they're playing the girls?" He says, "No, you're not understanding. This is serious. They need to bring their best game. We need to raise the level of play. They need to know I'm here to win, and they better be here to win. This is helping them progress." And I so appreciate, the respect and the seriousness and the time that he's giving to these girls to help move their game along. And they're so thankful to him, and he could do anything he wants with his time, but to do that is really just I mean, I've been an Ichiro fan forever, but that just, when learning that just warmed my heart. So
I want to switch gears a little bit and talk about producing this movie. Now, you said this is your first time directing, first time producing. Talk about the division of labor that has to go into something like this. Like, what exactly is your role in a product like this?
yeah, I mean, the role is, you're kind of touching all of it, but you need someone better than you to help you execute it. For me, because it's my first time, even like the interviews, I mean, that's what you do, and you do it so well. Like, I had a lot to practice to get the interview. I'd walk away and it's like really not get what I needed, and had to really adjust. So learning from people better than me, helping people, having people help me with the questions to ask and how to ask them to get to what I need in order to put the documentary together. So I'm pretty good at laying out an outline, and storyboarding what I see it. So that the visuals, the still photography helps me with that, and what the light, and how I want to shoot it and how cinematic. I didn't want it to be a talking head documentary. I wanted fans to watch it and people to watch it and say, "Wow, that's beautiful," and have a cinematic experience, not just interviews and talking heads. So there was a vision, but executing the vision certainly had its stops and starts and failures and successes. And but what a great experience. And then so it's how to shoot it, what it's going to look like. I mean, our first round of shooting baseball, I stepped out and said, "Well, we could do that better." But I got another chance because we did the semifinals and we shot the finals so much better than we shot the semifinals. And it's just experience, and then looking at the footage and realizing what you're missing and what it needs to look like and how you need to shoot it. So as it progressed, we got better. I'd like to think I got better, and then we had enough footage. We have over 500 hours of footage that, we could have made 3 documentaries. But so then it's the editing, and we had a really good team of editors. I had one a really good sports editor, because you also want it to be a sports movie. The baseball has to be right too, and there has to be enough baseball in there for the baseball fans. So um, so it's every facet of it and being able to touch it, but ideally having people better than you that's surrounding you so that you can make the best documentary we can make.
That's one thing I was gonna ask about how much footage you shot versus getting it down to the final less than 2 hours, and then the choices must have been agonizing because, of course, I imagine, "Oh, this is looks pretty, this looks great, this is very dramatic," but you can't have it all.
You can't, and some of the stories, I mean, our Shiro from, South Korea, she's a pilot, and she was studying to be a Navy pilot, and she was 2 years into her school, the only woman in aviation school. She passes the test to go into the Navy, and so we were going there and she says, "Hey, I'm not gonna be playing baseball because I got accepted into the Navy." I said, "Okay, well, I'm still gonna come. We'll document you going into the Navy and now, becoming a pilot and saying goodbye to your baseball team." 2 weeks before we got there, she said, "I have horrible news. I'm not going into the Navy. I failed the physical." And I
Oh,
thought,
wow.
"What could be wrong with her?" And I said, "Do you mind telling me, like, what happened?" "I am 0.3 centimeters too short."
Wow.
So, I mean, that was an so we had her tell the story, her parents told it, they were crying as they were telling the story, and it didn't fit. I mean, if I could have a documentary 5 hours long, but nobody would watch it, it fit, but you have to cut it somewhere, and that was a really unbelievable story that and I hope we'll be able to use that footage and tell individual stories because we have so much, footage from these women and the adversity they faced and, other stories to tell, but you have to keep it succinct and keep it moving in that direction for your message, and the message is that we want these women to have more opportunities. So,
When putting together something like this, you have to rely on other people. I'm just curious, Jeff Idelson, who used to be connected with the Baseball Hall of Fame, what was his role in this?
Jeff's role was everywhere. I mean, without him, we couldn't do it. He was our producer, first time producing for him, but he's a natural producer. He wouldn't say so, but he was just terrific. And of course, the contacts, the respect he has in the industry, the well-deserved respect of over 40 years in baseball, and just the trust that he's built. I mean, the friendship he has with Ichiro. He's so excited that Ichiro is going into the Hall of Fame. I think he talks about it every day, the first Japanese player going in. But these are real friendships that Jeff has made over many years and really cares about these people, his friendship with Cal Ripken Jr. and just those relationship and his love of baseball is just it's like no other. So this is just a new part of the game for him, of the women's game, but it's still an extension. And everywhere he goes, people want to talk to him. They still ask him why Pete Rose isn't into the Hall of Fame wherever we go.
Mhm.
And he answers it so politely and sweetly. And it's just his love of baseball that, every part of it. So the interview questions and how he can work on those and his depth, his knowledge of baseball really made our interviews so much better. And that's, Jeff's hand was on all of that, and his knowledge. So really every part of it, and then like me, he was also learning a bunch of new things, and so but they say as you get older, that's good for your brain, you're supposed to challenge yourself, so we did that, we did some good brain work for 3 years.
Well, one of the things that I noticed, and this is a real geeky question, some of the overhead shots, the very high overhead shots, I'm assuming those are done with drones?
Yeah, drones. Drone is so fun. The only and the only place we couldn't have Cuba would not let us have a drone. We couldn't bring a drone in, but we found rooftops so that we could have the same look.
Mhm.
So we just shot high, so that we could, have a sense of place, kind of this big opening wide shot to say, and that's how I like to shoot my stills too. So I shot stills for the first time on a drone. That was really fun. But having these drone shots really just made it so cinematic and beautiful to introduce each place you're going from this wide, beautiful view. And you make pictures that you can't make from any other angle. So it really adds something special to the footage.
You have the diversity of you have the dry heat of Uganda versus a very beautiful snowy scene, and it was that in Korea?
That was unbelievable. I had never experienced I mean, I had, like I was in Detroit for opening day in a snowstorm. I thought that was pretty cool. But to see this, like, tournament and have this winter wonderland, it was so cool, and it was like, "Wow," "this is gonna add something so special. Who cares, like, if we don't have the game today? This is so much better." And some of the women had never seen snow before. They were coming from different because they were from different countries, and they started off by looking at it, taking pictures, lightly touching it, and then they got all in it and started having snowball fights, and it got nasty. I was like, "Oh, well, they're not staying gentle for long." They had and it was a lot of fun. They had no equipment to clean up the snow, so they were using their signs to shovel it. Nobody knew what to do, but
Hmm.
we had a good time documenting all of it. So, yeah.
Was there one person of all the people you interviewed, you shot, was someone who lingers in your mind?
Oh, I'd probably say the whole Uganda experience, and there's actually a woman who she's not a main character in Uganda, but, her name is Brenda Awori, and she was at our last clinic, and she was quite an athlete. She was a catcher, and I was watching her, she just had a charisma to her, and she certainly was an athlete. So I took probably way too many pictures of her and spent too much time on her, and she came over to me at the end of and it was the second to last day. We had one more day of shooting, and we were leaving, and she approached me, and she said, "Do you know who I am?" And I said, no. Am I supposed to know who you are? I'm sorry."
Whoops.
And she says, "Well," she says, "I'm Brenda Awori." And I said, "I don't know you. I'm so sorry." And I'm thinking, "What am I missing here?" She says, "Well, we're Facebook friends." And she said, I said, "We are?" And she said, "Yeah, I reached out to you. You announced you were doing a project of women in baseball. I wrote to you on Facebook and told you I play baseball and you should come to Uganda." I said, "Did I write back?" And she said, "Yes." And you said, "I would love to. I hope I have the chance to." She goes, "And then you came here and you didn't even write to me and tell me you were coming." And I said, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe this is happening." But she was very special woman, and she invited me to her house, and we changed our schedule. And she lives in these slums in Uganda and sleeps on this dirt floor. And it was all flooded. Her whole it was what a scene and what a woman, and she works with orphans, and she teaches them not only baseball but different sports, and it's kind of better life through sports and hope. And she stood with me for a long time, and she was the last person that I interacted with in Uganda, and it was very strange going home and getting into my big bed thinking about her sleeping on the floor. And but we're still in touch now, and I certainly don't forget her now on Facebook. So we're buddies, and she's taught me a lot. You really I know it's cliche, right? You have so much, and but when you really are in it, you experience it, it doesn't go away.
Fascinating, fascinating. For me, I think it was Maybelle Blair,
Oh,
she's a hoot.
maybe I mean, and she's done so much for girls and women. She continues to be such a role model and a champion for women's baseball. Now she's 97. Am I getting right that or 98? She just had a birthday. I don't want to make her older. She might get mad if I say 98 and she's 97. But, oh, what an incredible woman. I mean, just yeah, her interviews were and she was one of the first women I interviewed, so I got to interview her twice, and I couldn't get enough. She's just such a special woman, and when she was done, she'd say, "Alright, when do we have that beer? Are you ready?" It's like, "Well, it's only 2 o'clock in the afternoon, but sure." Yeah.
And we've been talking with Jean Fruth, director and producer of the documentary See Her, Be Her, a wonderful accompanying book for it. Jean, it's always been a pleasure chatting with you. I wish you great luck, and I'm sure a lot of people are looking forward to seeing that when it starts streaming.
Oh, thank you so much. Thanks for having me on. I really appreciate the time.